Right there? All right. So I know that we are expecting a few more people. We don't have a full complement yet, but we have met quorum and it's time to get started. So if y'all are okay with it, we'll just go ahead and kick it off now. A few housekeeping points that I want you to keep in mind. Restrooms are out there in the lobby. According to the signs, there's no smoking on the patios. So during breaks, please refrain or step outside, downstairs if you need to. Fire escapes. I believe there's one here, and then there's another set of stairs out there that if we need to. Does anybody have any questions before we get started with everything? Gil, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you'll start us off with the pledge and your opening and everything.
Great. All right, if we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody to the full board meeting of the Savannah Riverside Citizens Advisory Board here in North Augusta. I trust that everyone found the municipal building without any problems and that we all got here safe and sound. This time, I just want to go around the table for the CAB members. We do have some new CAB members. So I'd like all of us to introduce ourselves so we can all get to know each other. And when we introduce ourselves, please let us know where you're from and why you're on the CAB. So, for example, I'll start with me. And I'm Gil Allensworth. I live in Aiken, South Carolina. And originally, when I came on the CAB, I was interested in economic development issues, and now it's kind of grown to interested in pretty much everything. So, and then we'll go to our right.
My name is Doug Howard. I'm one of the newly elected vice chairs. I'm from Evans, Georgia. Spent 28 years in the military. And one of the reasons why I decided to join the CAB was I just have something in me to serve this country, and I felt that this would help in doing that part in serving in this capacity. So I'm going into my second year, and thank everybody for your support in me, but also your help in helping me understand what I'm doing here. So thanks a lot.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg Murray. I'm from Augusta. I am a political science professor at Augusta University, and I have a lot to learn about the subjects we're going to be talking about, but if I can contribute any expertise, it might be hopefully something along the lines of government and the way governments operate and those sorts of things. So thank you for your patience with me as I learn all the other issues that go on as well.
Hello, my name's Mary Weber. I live in Aiken, and I'm in my 4th year on the CAB, which has been a wonderful learning experience. And I'd like to welcome all the new board members because I understand we have a lot of them. And I look forward to meeting you all and hope you have a great experience as I've had.
Good morning. My name is Jim Giel. I live outside of Beaufort on St. Helena Island in a gated community called Datoc. I had the privilege of attending one of the visitor tours of the Savannah River site. It certainly got me interested, and having spent a career in a high-tech environment, looked like it really fascinating stuff, and I look forward to learning more about it.
Thank you. I'm Larry Powell. I live on Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, have been for 35 years now. I'm interested in the environment and things that have an effect on the environment, and particularly the Savannah River site, since if anything bad happens there, it's going to go right downstream into my backyard. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tom French. I live in Aiken, and I spent the last 25 years of my career at the Savannah River National Laboratory, and most of that time was spent on technology development for environmental cleanup. So when I retired the second time, I was very interested in participating in the CAB and seeing how to give DOE advice, since for 25 years they gave me advice. So I think it's fair play.
Hello, I'm Brian Chemsak. I work at Beaufort Jasper Sewer Authority, and I heard about this from past member Earl Shepard. He spoke very highly of this, said it was a good experience. So I had some interest in learning about the site, as well as just being able to provide some more information to our customers as we are a downstream user of the river.
Good afternoon. My name is Dave Vavakis. Been on the CAB for 1 year now. I'm a federal government retiree, and I thought that maybe some of that experience would be helpful here. So,
good afternoon, Dan Kaminsky. I'm from Beach Island, originally from the Metro Detroit area. Moving down here, SRS is one of my biggest neighbors, so thought it would be very important. And as I introduced myself the first time for the CAB, I got interested in Adopt a Highway moving here, since South Carolinians seem to be a little bit messy on the roadsides, and I figured this was just a natural evolution of cleaning up the mess.
Good afternoon. I'm Carlos Cato, resident of North Augusta. I've got 3 generations of family that have worked on site, and as a child, I was always inquisitive, but never got the answers that I was looking for. So I decided to try and seek them out firsthand, and I'm just excited about serving the site and the community as well.
Hi, I'm Beth Cameron. I work for the Department of Health and Environmental Control. I work in a group that is the Environmental Surveillance and Oversight Program, and we do environmental monitoring on SRS and around SRS.
Hi, Shelley Wilson, also with the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. So just glad to see all of your interest and your willingness to serve. Thank you.
I'm Mike Budney, and I now live in Aiken. As of March 1st, I relieved Jack Craig as the site manager.
I'm Jim Folk. I'm with DOE, been with them for just about 35 years. I'm currently the assistant manager for waste disposition, and in my role here, I am co-DDFO along with Mike Michelanis.
Hi, I'm Ashley Jacobs. I live in Aiken, South Carolina, and I'm assistant county administrator for Aiken County. I'm a new CAB member, and I'm interested in the environmental and economic issues related to the site.
I'm John McMichael. I'm with the City of Aiken and Economic Development Officer for the city. And my interest is I'm serving the 4th year on the CAB, and economic development is such an important part of our area, and the site is certainly a big player in that. We want to make sure that there's a good connectivity between the city and the community and the site so that they actually understand what goes on there. And of course, the economic development and the ecology part of it too. Thank you.
I'm Charles Hilton from Graniteville, retired general manager of Breezer Hill Water and Sewer, involved in the water and sewer business all of my life. My career as an organic chemist. I'm fascinated by Savannah Riverside and all that went on there for so many years.
Hi, I'm Betty Cook from Hampton County. I'm retired food service director. I've pretty much been in food service all my life, in schools mostly, and I worked in hospital, nursing home, the prison. And I just took a tour in August and was very fascinated. I'm retired, so this gave me some interest, and I'm really fascinated with everything that goes on. And I'm just here to learn. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joyce Underwood. I live in Martinez, Georgia, originally from Crescent City, Florida, and I'm a military spouse. I moved here in 2016 and in July, and in October of 2016, while I was working on a creative writing project, because I'm a writer, I happened upon the fact that SRS was a thing in my backyard and became interested immediately, and here I am. And the short story is this all has to do with Duran Duran, so ask me later. I'm here because of Duran Duran. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Narendra Malik. I am SRS retired. Worked there for 24 years, and I thought it was time to give back to the community.
I'm Dawn Gillis. This is my 4th year on the cab, and I'm 30-year retired Fed. The last 15 years was at Savannah Riverside. And since I gave service in one capacity then, I get to give it in a different capacity now. So I've really enjoyed being on here. Right now I'm the chair of the Waste Management Committee.
Good afternoon, I'm Bobby Williams. I've been on the cab for a year. I'm from Blackville, South Carolina. I worked at Savannah Riverside for 36 years, retired. My last 25 years were spent in emergency services, and I'm on this board to learn what I didn't know about Savannah Riverside and to serve the community.
Good afternoon. I am Eleanor Hobson from Augusta, Georgia. I have been with the CAB since 2014. I joined the CAB because of interest in the environment and education, being reared on the banks of the Savannah River, practically, and still living near the Savannah River. I am a retired educator, school principal, and college professor.
Good afternoon, I'm Eric Crossan. I am the CEO of Walton Rehabilitation Hospital, just across the river in Augusta. I'm from Evans, Georgia. Joined the CAB, 2nd year now. Joined the CAB because I'm interested in the health aspects of the site.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, everybody. And since we do have so many new people, please, CAB members that are seasoned, please reach out and say hello, and let's get to know everyone so as we move forward. Before I start with the chair update, I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve as the chair of this CAB. It's something I take very seriously, and I appreciate all your support and allowing me to be here, and I thank Doug for being the vice chair. Thank you very much. It's pretty, Mike said hello during the introduction, but it's pretty exciting that we have new site manager, Michael Budney. We're happy that you're here. We're glad that you're here, Mike, and we look forward to hearing your update in a few minutes. With the chair update, I wanted to go over a few things. It's probably a little bit repetition. I know I met with the new members a few weeks ago, but I do want to also make it simple for all of us. And those of you that know me, and I think we know each other all, pretty well, know I kind of have a passion for football. And when I've told this story before, but anyone that knows football knows the name Vince Lombardi. And Vince Lombardi is what the Super Bowl trophy is. The Super Bowl trophy is named after Coach Lombardi. And he was a phenomenal football coach, arguably the greatest coach ever. And what he would do at the beginning of every season with his Super Bowl winning players and these phenomenal college rookies coming in to his team, he'd sit in front of his team and say, gentlemen, this is a football. And he would hold a football. And he'd explain to them the very basics of football. And he explained to them, and inevitably people would roll their eyes. He'd be like, listen, if we don't understand the fundamentals of football, we'll never be a successful football team. And so as we start off this new CAB year with a full board meeting, I want to go over our fundamentals. So, Chelsea, we were created to invoke stakeholders more directly in the DOE-EM cleanup decisions. We do public input that helps the agencies to make decisions that are cost-effective, community-specific, and environmentally sound, which leads to faster, safer cleanups. Now, this is coming directly from our mission statement, and it's while only one FACA-chartered EM SSAB, that's an Environmental Management Site-Specific Advisory Board. We are the Environmental Management Site-Specific Advisory Board of the Savannah River, thus the Savannah River Site Citizens Advisory Board. And local boards have been organized under the umbrella charter. So there's a charter that handles all the sites, CABs, for lack of a better term right now. And they're all under that charter. Local site board membership, which reflects a full diversity of views, cultures, and demographics from affected communities and regions, are composed primarily of people who are directly affected by site cleanup activities. I liked when, as we were going around the room, I liked what Larry said. What eventually happens here will come downriver. So while I live in Aiken and he lives 2.5 hours south of me, we're both affected. So why we have others that live in Georgia, some live in South Carolina. Okay. Next slide, Chelsea. What authority do we have? This charter establishes the Environmental Management Site-Specific Advisory Board under the authority of the U.S. Department of Energy. The board is being renewed in accordance with the provisions of the Federal Advisory Committee Act, or FACA, as you will hear us refer to it, as amended 5 U.S.C. App 2. Okay. Chelsea? What are our objectives and scope? Our objective and scope will provide the assistant, this is what we do, the CAB, I'm going to call ourselves a CAB instead of the EMSSAB, will provide the Assistant Secretary for Environmental Management, the appropriate Department of Energy, field managers or assistant managers for EM activities, and any other DOE official the Assistant Secretary shall designate with advice and recommendations concerning issues affecting the EM program at various sites. Savannah River with us. At the request of the Assistant Secretary or the field managers, the board may provide advice and recommendations concerning the following EM site-specific issues: cleanup standards and environmental restoration, waste management and disposition, stabilization and disposition of non-stockpile nuclear materials, excess facilities, future land use and long-term stewardship, risk assessment and management, and cleanup science and technology activities. The board may also be asked to provide advice and recommendations on any other EM scope or issue. What I liked when I read this and I was going over it and going over the fundamentals, what stood out to me was when we go up to the paragraph and we come down a few lines and it says, at the request of the Assistant Secretary or the field managers, the board may provide advice and recommendations. At the core, that's what we do. We provide advice and recommendations to the DOE. At our core, this is what we do. Chelsea, can I get the next slide? Our description of duties. The duties of the board are solely advisory. Agency responsibility for providing necessary support for this committee, the Department of Energy. Within the department, primary support shall be furnished by the Office of Environmental Management. The Department of Energy furnishes us with the information that we receive. So we sometimes, and tomorrow will be a situation where we do receive an outside presentation. So occasionally we do receive an outside presentation, but that is requested by the outside, and that is approved by Department of Energy. That is not approved by us. The Department of Energy provides the information that we receive. Next slide, please. Oh. So since becoming CAB chair in January in Hilton Head, there's been quite a bit of requests for the cab to speak and present. This was an opportunity we were given. Where was this one taken, Chelsea? Oh, we were invited to be president of the South Carolina Governor's Nuclear Advisory Council. So I attended their meeting, which was held at the Applied Research Center, and we were guests there. So that was one of the places that we were invited to. I hate to see the next picture. Chelsea? We were also invited to present at the National Academies of Science, Mathematics, and Engineering. Is that correct? So they were in Aiken, South Carolina for a meeting. They basically wanted they were researching the site and what we do. They were asking questions about how the cab is effective. And we just gave a general overview of what we do, who we are, and they asked a lot about how our policy, how do we give advice to DOE when DOE is kind of the agency that writes the check. And I said we have a good working relationship and we work well together. We also had another opportunity, which I know we don't have a picture of, to speak to another committee of the National Academy. And they asked specifically about plutonium and plutonium disposition. So the CAB support staff, thank you, James and Delisa and Chelsea, they pulled all our recommendations going back, to the 90s? Yeah, going back to the 90s about plutonium disposition, and we shared with them what we'd found. We were limited in the scope of what we could speak about there. They were asking about 34 metric tons of plutonium that obviously, does not fall under our purview. So we only spoke about the 6 metric tons that fall underneath environmental management. So that was we got through that as well. The next slide. We were also invited to a meet and greet with Department of Energy Secretary Rick Perry. We received, there wasn't much time here. We received an invitation, I believe, on Wednesday morning for a Friday morning meet and greet. I may be off on my days a little bit. But we got to spend 55 minutes or so at the Applied Research Center with Secretary Perry. I got to speak with him for 30 seconds, thank him for coming down, and told him, the CAB, we appreciate the support. The interesting thing that Secretary Perry shared as he spoke to the entire group was, as he's traveled the country and gone to different sites, he was a little bit overwhelmed about how supportive South Carolinians and Georgians were about Savannah River Site. He said when he goes to other areas of the country, there's a lot of negative, and they don't want it. They don't want it. He felt that there was just a good groundswelling of support for the site, and he explained how refreshing that was. It was an interesting time, very quick. Next slide. Then we had the honor of being invited to Jack Craig's retirement party. That was specifically fun. It was good to hear all the stakeholders, the contractors speaking about their relationships with Jack and how he'd been helpful. We got the opportunity to speak, and we thanked him for his forthrightness and for just always being there for us, and just thanked him for his service. I've been on the CAB for 3 years. Jack was here basically the entire time. So it was interesting for me, and I look forward to working with Mike. So we've been a little busy since January about going and talking to other groups, sharing the CAB. We're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to be out in the community. We're going to continue to talk about the CAB and what we do. As I've spoken with the chairs and the vice chairs of the committee, I've asked them to reach out to their sphere of influence and talk to the people who they associate with, and we can share more news about the CAB. We have a wonderful opportunity here. We get to hear from the very direct people who are doing the work at the site, and we get information directly from the source. We have a treasure trove of information that we hold to ourselves. Well, I want to share that with people. I hope you do too. during future chair updates, this is typically what I will do. I will share with what I've been doing, what Doug's been doing, and Doug will do a few of these as well. By the time we meet for our next full board meeting in May in Savannah, Georgia, Doug and I will come back. Doug and I are going to Carlsbad, New Mexico for the All Chairs Committee meeting. When we talked about the EMSSAB, the Environmental Management Site Specific Advisory Board. We meet twice a year as all the chairs that meet together. So we'll be going to Carlsbad. We'll be going to the Waste Isolation Processing Plant, WIP. So we will have a update for you there. I want everyone here to be informed of all the stuff that we do. And if you ever have any questions or you have any concerns, please let Doug or myself know. Email us. Doug's about the easiest person I've ever tried to get a hold of. He answers the phone almost all the time. And his emails back are really fast. And also for the new cab members, thank you so much for being here. And like we said in the orientation, if you have any questions, email James, okay? James, that's all I have. That's it.
Questions for Gil? No? Okay. So up next, we'll go through our meeting rules and agenda review, and our meeting rules are fairly straightforward. I'm just going to go through them so that even those of us who are new and are joining us for the first time will have a little bit of a handle about how we operate as a group. And so the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is help us adhere to the agenda timeline, and that basically means just make sure that we keep our discussions on topic. If you have something that you want to say related to a different topic, hang on to it. We'll get there, I promise. We always get there, don't we, Don? Eventually. Please listen to and respect other people's points of view. Make sure that you're listening to hear and not just to reply. Please participate and ask questions for clarification. If you don't understand something, please put your question card up. Everyone has one in front of you. You stand it up in front of you, and we'll get your question answered to make sure that you understand everything going on for the day. I do also ask that you state your name and affiliation for the prior to making comments. And it's not just so that everyone in the room knows who you are, it's so that when we're transcribing the minutes, we have an idea of who's speaking until we get, learn everyone's voices. It's incredibly helpful to have that name and affiliation at the beginning. In that same vein, please keep in mind that while the microphones are often turned very low when not speaking, they're still slightly on. And if you have side conversations, they probably will get picked up. You may not hear them in the room. We will probably hear them on the recording on the internet. Okay? So please keep that in mind if you're making side conversations. It's best just not do it at all. Place your phones and pagers on silent for those of you who still have pagers. I think they're pretty much all gone now. It's just cell phones these days, isn't it? Some people still have pagers. But if you would, put them on silent just for the moment or on vibrate just so that we don't hear them for the day. And I'm going to ask, Joyce put hers on silent. I just saw her. She checked. Yes, you did. You put your phone down. Oh, well, you could play along. You could play along and it'd be fun. Please do not dominate the conversations. I'm going to ask that when you do ask questions of a DOE presenter or somebody, get one, maybe two questions out, and let's move back on. And if time permits, I promise we'll come back around to you and we'll try and get everything answered that we can. Are there any questions about our ground rules for the day? No? All right. Everybody agrees this is what we're going to do? This is how we're going to operate for the day? Yes? All right. Sure. Whatever. All right. For the agenda, it's going to be a fairly straightforward day. Up next, we're going to do the agency updates, and we'll introduce everybody as we get to it. We'll take a short break if we need to. Probably poll the audience, see how y'all feel about that. And then we'll take, after the break, we'll go into the committee updates. Each chair will update everything that they've been working on over the past little while. We haven't had much going on in the past month or so, so I expect that that'll go fairly quickly. And then we'll go into the integrated priority list letter discussion. And that's where we're going to have a lot of fun today. We have an hour and a half budgeted for it roughly. If we need to go a little bit longer, we can. I know that some of the newer members especially may have some questions about what some of those programs are that we're rating. Please don't hold back. We'll make sure that you understand what it is that you're endorsing. Whenever we get done with the discussion, everybody is comfortable with the text of the letter as edited. We'll set that aside for the rest of the day. We'll adjourn. We'll come back tomorrow, and at the end of the day tomorrow, we'll vote on that letter, and that'll be your official CAB position for the priority list. Any questions about the agenda and what we're going to do today? None? Y'all always have questions. Okay. Mr. Budney, can you kick it off for us today and get started with the agency updates for DOE?
Certainly, thanks. Good afternoon. I'm happy to be here. I'm actually delighted to be here. Anybody who's ever lived in D.C. and had to suffer through that traffic or the one-hour bus ride one way to work every day, being in Aiken is just the greatest thing that's ever happened to my family. Over the last month, fortunately, I had time with Jack Craig prior to actually taking the job, so that was very good. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and I got a good 3 weeks with him. He really set me up to meet everybody I need to meet on the site. Got me my own tours of the site, followed by a tour for our Undersecretary Paul DeBar, followed by another tour for the new head of the National Nuclear Security Administration, Lisa Gordon Haggerty. So I'm kind of getting to know my way around. I think I got another tour next week, so I'll be able to find my way to work pretty well by that time that one's done. I want to thank you all for your service here and helping us out and providing advice, especially the new members who've decided to take the time and join the CAB. Really appreciate that. There's probably nobody on the site who needs advice more than me right now. I haven't been in the job just 2 weeks, but I'm delighted to be here to hear what you all are thinking about and what you believe the priorities need to be. So I'll just go through a few material updates on our programs. As you may know, we got a liquid waste contract that was protested. The Government Accountability Office upheld that protest, and so we're going through the process now to resolve that protest with the bidders, and they'll be resubmitting, and we'll go through an evaluation process so we get that contract awarded over the next few months. Our maintenance and operations contract, the SRS executes, is coming up for a recompete, and we recently published that we'll be putting out a draft request for proposal within the next few weeks to get that process moving forward too. So budget, I wish I could tell you a whole bunch of things about the budget, but we don't have the budget yet. Still working on our continuing resolution for fiscal year 18 that runs through the 23rd, so we ought to see something soon for the FY18 budget. FY19 budget has been released previously back in February, and we're about to kick off our process to develop the FY20 budget internally. Within the nuclear materials program, H Canyon operations began processing the high flux isotope reactor cores this month. I'm told that's the first time we've done that in 30 years. So that's a great accomplishment to that team to get that process moving again. Plutonium downblend is going on. We just completed the required 6 destructive examinations of some what we call the 3013 plutonium containers, and we've begun downblending plutonium again for that project. Within the liquid waste program, as you may know, we've had a system outage for almost a year. Melter number 3 was successfully installed in the Defense Waste Processing Facility and has been successfully tested. So we're making the final preparations here, and we should have that system back in full operation in about a month. So, continuing the double stacking of the containers in the glass waste storage building, number 1. The Saltstone facility continues operations. It processed almost 200,000 gallons of decontaminated salt solution through February. And we've got an evaporator, the 3H evaporator was repaired on startup, though we had some leaks. So we're going back and reevaluating that and determining the path forward on what we do to bring that system back in operation. Salt waste processing facility, we continue to work to bring that online here in fiscal year 19. As of January, the commissioning was at 71% complete, so we're working through all the system operability tests that have to be conducted to bring that online. I think we have 56 or 60 of those tests done. Probably introduce chemicals in May, and we're also 15% complete on construction of the next generation solvent chemical feed facility. In addition, we're getting ready to put together the tank closure cesium removal, or ticker system. Fabrication's been completed. Factory acceptance testing is completed. They're working on, with the company who put it together, Westinghouse, is working on putting together the final documentation for that testing and starting to ship us the components over the next few weeks so that we can install that and sometime this summer get that system operating to increase the rate at which we can process material. Salt Waste Disposal Unit 7 is waiting on us to get a budget so we can continue working on that thing. It's been kind of a day-to-day delay while I've been sitting on this, on the continuing resolution, but hopefully in a week or so we'll get the funding and get moving there. Soil and water cleanup, working with EPA in the state of South Carolina on what's called a early removal action, and using bioremediation to address solvent-contaminated groundwater at the Sea Area Groundwater Operable Unit. And I got to get into some more details on this chemistry because I really haven't got the brief on this, but we're injecting a mixture containing edible oils into the groundwater plume to serve as a food source for microbial activity, which would destroy the solvent content. So I got to get down there and see how that actually is working, because that's a new operation in chemistry for me. I have a nuclear training background, not microbes. So another major project underway is in the A area to get the firewater system into compliance with National Fire Protection Association codes. So we have subcontracts to put together, build a 300,000-gallon firewater storage tank and fabricate and deliver pump house and electric primary pump, diesel backup pump. So all those things are moving forward. The DS project remains ahead of schedule and under budget, which is a great way for a federal project to go. So the installation of the geosynthetic cover should begin by the end of this month, and mechanical completion by the end of fiscal year 18. At the Savannah River National Laboratory, Dr. Mikulski has retired, and his relief, Dr. Vahid Majid, has arrived, and I got to meet with him the other day. He's not new to DOE. He was a chemistry division director at Los Alamos. Is a tenured professor of chemistry at University of Kentucky. He was in the senior executive service and the senior intelligence service in the federal government, and he's up and running as the new director of the Savannah River National Lab. And he and I missed crossing paths. I worked a lot when he was SES. He worked at ran the Office of Nuclear Matters in the Pentagon, and I'd worked extensively with his predecessor when I was on active duty. So I'm familiar with the sort of work that he's been involved in before. The lab's doing great stuff. They've done some great technology transfers recently. They have a metal hydride heating storage system that's being that's licensed under the United Sun Systems Corporation for use in concentrated solar. So it'll enable them to store the heat they generate with a concentrated solar system to generate electricity when the sun is not shining. So that's pretty cool technology that those folks have put together. There's some glass microsphere technology was licensed to Augusta University for medical applications to deliver pharmaceuticals in a targeted manner. And with a Hawaiian company, they're working, via a DOE small business grant to improve hydrogen cell technology for forklifts. So, in the issues category, the H Canyon exhaust duct is being evaluated to make sure that thing meets the structural integrity it's required for its use. That's a pretty extensive technical analysis that's going on there, which will take most of the rest of the year to get complete. So that comprises my update for today.
Are there any questions? I don't believe it. You're kidding, really? None? Going once? Going twice? We're strictly with the board today, but thank you. Okay, well, EPA was next up on the agenda, and they send their apologies. They had a mandatory event that they had to be at today, and unfortunately weren't able to attend. But we do have DHEC next, so let's go straight to that. You ready, Shelley?
I wish I could say always ready. So Shelley Wilson with South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control, and it's a great pleasure to be here with you today. So I'll just share something I heard the other day that there was a study done on topics and words in literature for today versus like decades ago. And today, the top topics or words had to do with fame and money, whereas decades ago, it was like community and honor. So we've had a shift in mass culture, but what you're doing today, it really ties into that service and that community and that honor. So I really appreciate your time and your efforts to serve the community, the area in South Carolina. So just had two DHEC updates for you, and then wanted to get closer to Savannah River site. But we've talked before about the western groundwater capacity use area, and I'll give you an update on that. But what that is South Carolina, we're a humid state. We have lots of water, or at least we always thought we did. And now we're figuring out we have to keep a closer eye on groundwater availability in some areas, particularly along the coast. And then also more recently, we've been looking at the area of Aiken, Allendale, Bamberg, Barnwell, Calhoun, Lexington, and Orangeburg. So that area we're calling the western groundwater area. And we've had a lot of public meetings. We've had a meeting in each county to gather input on whether or not we should designate that area as a capacity use area, meaning just an area that we would keep a closer eye on for groundwater use now and into the future to make sure we have resources still readily available for future generations. So we haven't made that decision at DHEC yet. Like I said, we've had lots of public meetings, one in every county, and we're going to have even some more opportunities. So towards the late spring, summer, hopefully we'll be drawing that to a close. But keep your eye out for some more public meetings that we're having if you'd like to have input into that western groundwater capacity use area process. Second, you may have heard about proposed beachfront jurisdictional lines, and this might be more important for you all near the coast. But every so often we have to update those lines of where the critical area is on the coast. And we've taken a recent look at the science to do that. We've had a public comment period and open for those proposed new lines. And we're extending that comment period again because we want to make sure everybody has a chance to know where those lines would be for their property, to evaluate what that means to them, and to have the good, solid amount of time to weigh in with their public concerns before we get closer to making any decision. So, but for North Myrtle Beach, that comment period has been extended to April the 6th, and for all the other beaches, it's extended to July 15th. So, if you want some more information on that, please let me know. So, and now honing into Savannah River site. I'm looking at your draft letter on the FY20 budget, And I know that there might be some changes to this letter, but I just wanted to let you know that, that I was very pleased to see radioactive liquid waste right there at the top. And so I'll tell you that DHEC has already submitted our priorities to the site for the FY20 budget. And what did we have at the top? We have high-level waste, treatment and tank closure. So just wanted to point out that, that right there we coincide if your letter remains as it is in draft. But let me unpack that just a bit for you to explain why we put it as number one. So out of all the things that DHEC is involved with for the site, which is air and water and wastewater and stormwater, we focus a good bit of activity on oversight, so everything meets current standards, and then a large amount of activity on remediation, and that is soil and groundwater cleanup, reduction of legacy stockpiles, things that have piled up over time that we regulate, and high-level waste is one of those. But if you look at soil and groundwater, make no mistake, that's very important to DHEC, that cleanup that Savannah River is ongoing. Just want to give you some feel for how we're doing on that, because out of the over 500 contaminated areas that were identified at Savannah River that were potentially contaminated and needed to be cleaned up, we've made cleanup decisions on over 80% of those areas. And so the key thing I'm trying to convey here is that we're in really good shape for soil and groundwater. Most of the cleanup has been addressed. And so there's still a lot, still 20% or so more to go. But those are areas that I wouldn't, there's no imminent danger from those areas. We have a good, so 80% is just a very high rate at having soil and groundwater addressed. So we need to keep up the pace of cleanup for that remaining 20%. But we've done so much work since the 80s and 90s and into this decade that we feel we're in pretty good stead. That's why soil and groundwater is not the highest priority for us. Okay? So another area is other stockpiles of waste. For example, transuranic waste, and even there, the tremendous amount that Savannah River site had accumulated, over about 95% of that has already been sent to the waste isolation pilot plant in New Mexico for final disposition. So even there, there's a very small amount remaining. We're still concerned about it, but it's a small amount. And again, that's why the transuranic waste isn't number one priority for us. So that leaves high-level waste. And like I said, that is the top priority for DHEC. It's 36 million gallons of liquid waste that's toxic and radioactive in tanks that are aging. And they're degrading as they age. And so we focus a lot on the treatment of that waste so that the risk is reduced, and then closure of those tanks. And we've called that the single largest environmental threat risk in the state of South Carolina. Higher than the previous commercial hazardous waste landfill, higher than many other sites. So the single largest environmental threat, that's why we put it there. Top is our number one priority for risk reduction and for DOE budget. So I just wanted to say that the other interesting thing is that at least your draft letter shows a lot of alignment with your priorities, I believe, and with what DHEC holds as a high priority. And even if you hear from environmental management, DOE, what they say their top priority is also high-level waste. So you don't find that kind of alignment in some of the other states. If you look around at other states that host DOE sites, you don't always find that alignment between DOE and the state and stakeholders in the community. But it's a very powerful thing, I think, here in South Carolina, that many of us are aligned to see that as the top priority. And again, our comments on the FY20 budget, we were saying, high-level waste is number one. We want to see the biggest budget there. Savannah River actually had put forward high-level waste as one of the items for what they called a DOE top-level 45-day review. And so, for example, if high-level waste was determined to be a completion project or a closure project, there might be designated money each year, additional money, for that site that would kind of help drive it along to completion faster. So, so again, whatever you call it, if it's a completion project or not, the key thing here is a steady source of income and budget to drive high-level waste treatment and tank closure. So I'll liken it a little bit to a car, maybe that has 3 tires, and the fourth one is a temporary, perhaps, tire that you're, what do you call those things? A spare. A spare, thank you. So the high-level waste system, we've had a lot of components in place for a long time. The salt waste processing facility is the last big piece that's been constructed and is about ready to go live. So when that facility gets online, it will be like having a car with 4 good, robust tires. And when that happens, the site can fly in terms of treatment of that waste to get the risk down and be able to close tanks. Well, that car can't go fast if it doesn't have budget. And so when that system comes up and it's whole and it's ready and salt waste processing facility is online, then we're going to need the healthy, strong, DOE, consistent, steady budget to be able to drive that thing well, safely, and fast. And that's what is going to get the risk down for South Carolina so those tanks can be closed. So again, just wanted to share with you some of our thoughts on the FY20 budget, and that's really all I have for you today if there are any questions.
Anything? No, not even Dawn? Okay. Oh, Mary, let's go.
Thank you, Shelley, for the update. I hadn't seen the draft letter before today. I don't know if it had been emailed or circulated, but I do agree with a lot of the points, and I'll have some more questions for Gil when we discuss it. But I really appreciate your endorsement of it.
Yes, Gil.
Hey, Shelley, thanks. On the, I didn't write down the exact, but on the Western water resource that you're talking about, like in Aiken, Allendale, Barnwell, is the site any affected by that, or has the site affected the water levels there?
So I'd like to defer to the site to answer that. I'll just say that my initial conversations indicated somewhat of a comfort level with the direction of the western groundwater capacity use area for the site. But I don't want to speak for Savannah River site. In other words, my initial conversations were that the site was okay if that area did end up being a designated capacity use area, that they're in pretty good stead.
Okay, I guess I didn't ask my question clearly. Did the site create, does DHEC believe the site created any issues to have it? No?
No.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay. Anything else from around the table? Thank you, Shelley. So next up on the agenda is a break, but I think it's a little bit early to cut into that just yet. Don't you guys think? We can keep going, right? Yeah. So let's go into the committee updates. And up first, I believe, is administrative and outreach. So Eleanor, can you give them a bit of an update on what A&O has been doing?
Okay, thank you, James. Eleanor Hobson, CAB. First of all, welcome to North Augusta. And it is beginning to be a lovely day. The sun is coming out and so forth. I would like to welcome all new members to the CAB and invite you to sign up to become a member of our Administrative and Outreach Committee. We oversee election of board officers and committee chairs. We also engage in outreach activities. We will have our meeting this afternoon after this meeting on the first floor. I believe it is the Palmetto Room, is that? Palmetto Training Room. I invite you to sign up to become a member of the Administrative and Outreach Committee. We have been engaged in membership drives, of course, and we are glad that each of you became a member. We will continue to have tour table talks, and that enables us to recruit new members. CAB members, remember to schedule with James if you are interested in participating in a talk during one of the tours this year. And that is all I have for the Administrative and Outreach Committee today.
Does anyone have any questions for Eleanor? All right, so just remember that today's meeting for the A&O committee will be after this main meeting. If you've ever been interested in what Administrative and Outreach has been doing, I encourage you to come down to the first floor with us and see what it's all about. Okay. Tom, can you update us on the Budget, Pension, and Scope Committee?
Yes, I can. I think I'm going to give the new members a little background because this is a temporary committee that was put together to address one very major issue at the site. The pension demands for funding the pension are going up horrendously over the next 5 years. And they're going to get to the point in about 2020 where they're going to start to impact site mission. So we formed a committee that's of limited duration, will end in May, and this committee was to offer recommendations to the department on what we feel would be the best approach to balance these two things. We want to keep funding the pension, obviously, but we do not want the mission to suffer in any way. We want it to stay at its currently planned level. So there's a few recommendations we made. Part of them is education, part of it's funding. But what we've done is we've had 3 meetings. We've met with people to describe to us how the pension fund works and what drives it. We've met with DOE, and they've talked to us about what are the impacts. If we start putting $300 million in a pension, what are the impacts to the site operation? And then last month we met and talked, we just brainstormed what could we do? What's reasonable as a group? We've heard a lot of different things, so we narrowed it down to 8 recommendations. I have finished the draft recommendation, and all the committee members will have it in their email. We're not going to talk about it right now because the committee hasn't met. We're going to meet next Tuesday and go through and correct the recommendations and do any wordsmithing. I wrote it, so it's going to need wordsmithing. I just have to put that out there. So it's a very complicated problem because the pension is very complicated, and it's also driven by pieces of legislation. So I tried to capture all those so that we can look down what was the impact of the legislation and why is that going away. So that's my report.
Any questions for Tom? Dan?
Dan Kaminsky, CAB. Hey, do we have enough people on the committee still, now that we've had old members retire?
No, we do.
And we're represented across all committees?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
All right. Shelley, did I see your hand go up?
Yes, Shelley Wilson again. And for the new members, I promise I don't normally talk this much. But Tom, I just wanted to say that we also mentioned the pension in our FY20 priority list feedback, just that it was an issue that needed resolution. And so, we don't play any part in regulating that, so we didn't dive deeply into it the way that you all did. But we just noted that it was an issue that could potentially severely disrupt site activities. And just saying all that to say thank you very much for taking that deep dive and really working to offer up some recommendations. We really appreciate you all doing that, especially because of the potential to impact the budget positively. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
All right. Anything else on budget, pension, and scope? I will say, not just for the new members, but for the other members who haven't been keeping up yet, all their meetings are recorded and are on the CAB website, so you can go back and catch up with when they started meeting. And I think your first meeting was in October of 2017, and they've met every month since. And I've learned a lot about pensions that I never thought I would ever need to know. All right, so any other questions for Tom? All right, so Joyce, I think that you and FDSR are next.
Hello, my name is Joyce Underwood, and I am the chair of the Facilities Dispensation and Site Remediation Committee. And I would first like to welcome all of you, dear friends and gentle CAB members, ladies and gentlemen, to beautiful North Augusta. So yeah, I'm new. So this is my first time doing this. There are no open or pending recommendations. So come to a meeting if you're on the committee, come to the meeting if you're not on the committee, and let's get some new recommendations going. The only thing that I kind of have on deck that I'd like to discuss and explore in the next committee meeting is look at a way to see if we can find some housing solution for Dr. Rhodes' graduate students at the Savannah River Ecology Lab, because he came last meeting in Hilton Head and spoke to us about what they do there. And one of the problems that they have is finding housing for the students between University of Georgia, University of South Carolina, all the people that come together. And that'd be a nice thing that we could help him with, I hope. So that's what I've got going on there. Yeah, that's all I got. So thank you. I'm sorry, what? Oh, yeah. Thanks. This is our co-chair, by the way, Narinder Malik. I'm sorry, I should have introduced him. Our next meeting is April 18th at 4:30 to 6:20 p.m. at the meeting center in Aiken, and I hope to see a lot of you guys there. So thank you.
Any questions for Joyce and FDSR? Larry, you ready?
Thank you, James. I'm Larry Powell. I'm chairman of the Nuclear Materials Committee, and I'd like to welcome everyone to North Augusta, especially the new CAB members. It's good to see some new faces, and we're going to miss a lot of old faces too. Already beginning to miss some of these people very much. We have one open recommendation, which is the receipt of the German fuel. We have no pending recommendations. For the people that that have been on CAB for a while, you know that Nuclear Materials Committee is like a roller coaster ride. We either have a lot going on and we don't seem to be able to finish it in the time that we have, or we have pretty much nothing going on. So we're at one of those points in time right now where we have very little going on, but I got a feeling this is going to be a pretty busy year for us, and look forward to getting things going. That's all I have at this time.
Yeah, I think your presentation tomorrow is going to set some things moving for you. Any questions for Nuclear Materials? Dan?
Hi, Dan Kaminsky. I am the chair of the Strategic and Legacy Management Committee. And since Gil kind of opened this up, getting back to basics, and having been a member on this committee and others for quite a while, I thought it'd also be a good idea to back it up and tell explicitly what the committee's all about. This committee is involved in strategic issues relevant to the EM cleanup program at SRS. This includes performance assessments, as well long-term policy planning and cross-cutting issues related to other CAB committees. So we kind of go across all boundaries here. Specific areas of interest are development and deployment of technology, the SRS budget for the site, decision-making process, future land use, relevant national environmental policy. The committee encourages other CAB committees to integrate long-term stewardship into issue deliberations and CAB recommendations. We have a bunch of new members on our committee, and all are welcome to sign up as well. So with that, welcome to all our new members. I'm excited to start a new year. This is my first time as committee chair, so hopefully you'll bear with me as I probably have a few growing pains myself. That being said, we do have an open recommendation, number 346, drone spotting over SRS. And I thought we were pretty close to making a final recommendation on that one, but we'll take it up in our next committee meeting. So please join us if you had any specific input on that topic. And we also have pending number 351, Savannah River National Lab funding. So we'll also be discussing that one at length. And hopefully, do we have an idea on when we would be receiving a response? Okay, great. Hopefully not days after the committee meeting?
I don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
Hopefully not too long.
And we have the honor of hosting the Savannah River Archaeology Research Program. We have a presentation tomorrow, and that'll be presented by George Wingard. That's all I have.
All right. Any questions for Dan in Strategic and Legacy Management?
Oh, and also I'd like to thank David for volunteering to be my vice. Appreciate this.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions for SNLM? All right. Don, why don't you update us on waste management?
Dawn Gillis, Cab. One thing I forgot to mention in our introductions is that I actually live in New Ellington. I'm about 2.5 miles from the New Ellington gate, and that includes my half-mile driveway. So that's one of the reasons why I want to make sure what's going on, continue to make sure what's going on out there. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and the new members, and another activity to help out in the community. Before I go into the waste management things, I wanted to make one statement on nuclear materials, that I wanted to congratulate DOE on getting HIFER started. Yes. Been waiting on that one. Okay, and recommendations. We've got one open recommendation in the waste management milestones, and we have 3 pending for glass waste storage, DWPF additional failed equipment storage, and the reclassification of high-level waste. Let's see. There's one recommendation that it's up here, it hasn't been put down on paper yet, to deal with the scheduling of the remaining legacy true waste and the downblended PU, and dealing with WIP and its schedules, et cetera. So, and I'd already talked to DOE about this, so that's going to be coming up. So we have a presentation tomorrow on some new technology that's going to be used in, let's see, sonar mapping. That's going to be used in the tanks, correct?
It was reviewed. You'll get the conclusions of the study tomorrow.
Okay, but so we'll get that tomorrow. And next meeting is 17th. I have it on my calendar here, but so any questions?
Let's take a 10-minute break, because I think that when we get going on the IPL that we really need to settle in and keep at it. So let's take 10. Let's come back at 2:18. Yeah, 2:18. Let's be back in our seats at 2:18. seats. Chelsea's pulled the letter up. That means we got to get moving. Tripping on a cable. I'm going to fall. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am? Well, I will. I will. I'm just getting people good. All right, as we wait for everyone to finish taking our seats and get started, Dan, I know that you wrote the draft for this. Do you want to introduce this in any meaningful way?
Dan Kaminsky, Cab. This is a takeoff of last year's IPL letter. So what I did was kind of updated it for a couple of logistics reasons. Everything you see in yellow was just a quick update to make it current. The actual recommendations, those were the order in which we voted on last year, and a little bit more detail with regards to PBS 11C was added to kind of reflect what the original intent was and what some of our discussions over the past year have been revolving around. And when you scroll down a little further, Chelsea, number 1 was added only to not supplant but to support the ad hoc committee, since the IPL letter will be in prior to the committee's recommendations going forward. So that kind of summarizes it to a certain degree. And then number 2 there, PBS 202, never came about because it was declined by Congress, so those would revert back to supporting those improvements over all PBS. The only recommendations I have further is Gil, since you're signing on behalf of the committee, you might want to personalize a little bit of the introduction or closing paragraphs to more your liking if you choose to. Otherwise, general feedback from people who've just recently read it, it's in reasonably good shape, and I think we can just maybe nitpick a little bit of the order of some of these priorities, or if there's a priority out there that hasn't been mentioned in the prior letter.
So just to remind everyone, and I sent this out to the new members, I sent you the presentation from January so that you would have it and have an idea of what we were doing today, and the link to the video recording so that you could see John Lopez give the presentation and give instructions to the cab on what we were going to be tackling. Are there any questions about the process? I saw Don's. Yeah, I know yours is not a process question. You got an issue. But are there any questions about the process and what we're doing today? None? We're all on board? Okay. Don, what you got for us?
Dawn Gillis Cab. The only, this is good. I mean, it looks very normal and basically in the right order. The only question I have is, I don't understand what you mean by to be. Spent nuclear fuel within the target range to work off backlog versus C, that's blending down for TVA. I don't understand what the difference between those two are.
If you took the PBS chart that we were provided, those were the subcategories of 11C.
Well, maybe I need to ask that of DOE then.
Yeah.
I don't understand what the difference between these two are.
Maxine Maxted, DOE. I haven't seen those words for B, but I would interpret it to mean what we're doing in terms of processing the fuel under the AROD amount. That's the 1,000 bundles of MTR fuel and up to the 200 hypercores. And then C is what we do with the uranium that we get from that processing. That's what gets downblended and sent to TVA. So I think it's a distinction between the two activities.
So Don, if it's any more confusing, it was in last year's letter?
I don't remember having this question in last year's letter, but.
The only thing that really changed on A, B, and C was kind of a reformat of the way it was written up.
Oh, maybe I understood it last year.
You may have written it.
No, I did not write it. I'll guarantee that. Let me think on that for a few more
Okay.
minutes.
So let's come back to Dawn in a little bit. Are there any other questions or comments? Tom?
Tom French, the cab. I think we might want to think about, in the second grouping, number 3, maintain men's safe for all activities. My impression is men's safe, in quotes, is a specific state at the site. And I think what we want to do is, and I think, Dan, this is what you had said before, we want to maintain current planned operation.
Right.
I think that's what we would like to change the words to.
Yeah, so this was a discussion last year as well. Thanks, Tom, for bringing it up. MinSafe is obviously a baseline component of every PBS, and restating it here, in my opinion, is redundant and may, in effect, give some people the wrong impression that we're only interested in MinSafe standards, and that's not the case. Of course, they have to comply with MinSafe. So that being said, I'd like to actually get rid of number 3.
So how do we feel about that? Is anybody opposed to getting rid of number 3 in that bottom section? No? All right. Chelsea, will you strike through number 3 in that bottom section?
And just so everyone knows, when I tweaked this to get ready for this event today, I refrained from having my comments put into this because this is a collaborative effort. I think that was one of my red comments when I was working with James on this.
Okay. So we're going to strike through number 3 and get rid of it. Are there any other comments? Questions, things you'd like to see changed? Mr. Hilton.
I apologize, but being completely new and just seeing this and going back to the integrated priority list that we'd received in our orientation packages, on 2A, plutonium downblend processing for disposition to the waste isolation pilot plant. I'm curious of this process, how this relates to MOX, which is not in our purveyance, but it's 4 tons, I think, of plutonium that we're talking about in this program.
Maxine, Max said DOE. It's actually 6 metric tons, and it's the plutonium that's not MOXable, that couldn't go to MOX, so it's not useful in that term for that facility, so it would be what we would be doing to disposition that material as EM. That's an EM-owned material, and it's an EM scope. So that's why it falls under your purview.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Narendra? Nope, his card was up first.
Okay, when I'm ready, you're ready.
Narendra? Oh, I'm sorry, Joyce. I thought it was
Joyce
your card.
Underwood, cab. This is probably a dumb question. We got rid of number 3. Is it not useful to do what Tom said and put in, how did you word it? Maintain current operations instead of MinSafe? Is that not a valuable thing to put in there?
This is Tom French. Number 1 sort of addresses that. It addresses.
Oh, okay.
So I agree with Dan.
Okay, so it was redundant?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't, thank you.
All right. Don?
Dawn Gillis, cab. How about wording B, on C, taking out processing? Because when I see processing, I see the actual dissolving. And what I'm hearing is C is supposed to be, once it's dissolved, this is the down blending and shipping to TVA part. So if we just take out, as we have spent nuclear fuel down blend for disposition to TVA for C, and for B, and this might get into a lot of words, say, continue processing SNF within the approved schedule towards completing 1,000 bundles and 200 HIFA cores.
Well, make sure that we're not verging, and I don't have the documentation for me, we want to make sure that we don't verge into writing a recommendation territory. We're ordering the PBSs.
Right, but if I'm hearing that now, if there's a, see that within target range to work off backlog, that doesn't tell me anything.
Okay.
Should we say within the, keeping it?
Does the department need clarification on that?
Maxine Maxted, DOE. I'd make the recommendation to change it to SNF processing in accordance with the approved AROD.
That works. That works. I was trying to figure out that, yeah, that's accordance.
So 2B,
To be,
not C, 2B.
keep it, processing within the approved AROD.
Amended record of decision.
Yeah, amended, yeah. No, wait a minute, see,
Amended record of decision.
record of decision.
Yeah, record of decision.
Amended record of decision.
Okay. Are we okay with this? Everyone's all right with this change?
Well, if it's obvious, it has to be, okay, that makes more sense to me.
Okay. Dawn, you got any others? Nope. She just moved her microphone. Okay. What else have we got? Are there any other changes, suggestions? Gil?
I just have a question, and it may be stupid. Dan, do we need, when in the top one, 2A and 2C, do we need to say to the Waste Isolation Pilot Plan and to Tennessee Valley Authority? Do we need to have that in there?
Not by me, Gil.
I mean, I'm asking the entire cab, is there a reason why we're saying it has, to WIP and to TVA?
Yeah, that was original wording on this, so.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. Just staying within, us not trying to, we're trying to stay within our, Dawn has an answer.
Don Gillis Cab, those currently are the approved disposition off-site of these materials, am I correct?
That's correct.
So as long as it's within the approved, I would rather see it being a disposition somewhere else than here.
That's kind of the reason I was asking, does it matter where? I mean, if it's approved.
Well, but these are currently the approved ones, and if we just say downblend it, they can downblend it all day long and just leave it in K area.
I got you.
Any other comments on water?
Changes we need to see? Dan did that good a job prepping everything that we're good?
Just actually another correction of what I said earlier. Number 3 up there, PBS 30, that actually was added based on prior cab discussion and concerns. So I just momentarily put it as a placeholder.
Okay.
So something for consideration if that's in the right spot for us. It's obviously directly related to the Wicklid tank waste stabilization, but not entirely, as there's other water risks out there.
Any other comments, questions, changes? Hey, Joyce.
Joyce Underwood Cab, and this is not a content concern so much as a formatting concern. I feel like any funding short of this would be a great concern to us. Could be worded better, but I'm sitting here trying to reword it and I got nothing, so I just wanted it on the record that I thought it could be worded better.
Where was that? Was that in the top?
It's in the first paragraph.
First paragraph? So you might need to scroll up.
It's not important, just.
Oh, there it is. Any funding short of this would be a great concern to us.
It's not important, it can stay, just.
No, we have time. Any thoughts regarding this? This troubling anyone else? Do we want to talk about it, take it out, leave it in?
I just want to reword it so it's not passive. But I don't know how.
So the concern for you is that it's too passive a voice? Okay.
I told you it wasn't important.
No? No one wants to touch it?
No, leave it. I just wanted it on the
I don't
record.
think it's just you. I agree with
Yeah, I
you
think
too,
it's
but I don't have a suggestion either. Anything else? Okay, come on, Gil.
Since Joyce opened it up. Yeah, it's your fault, Joyce. And Dan invited me to change some of the wording. If we scroll down to the bottom.
I invite you to change it all.
No.
Down at the very
Instead
bottom.
of "we hope that our input is taken seriously," let's make it a thank you for allowing us to submit this.
Okay.
Instead of it making it kind of passive aggressive.
If you give us that wording afterwards, we can,
Yeah,
we can change it.
basically we'll say, thank you for the opportunity to present.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity, ... We'll fix it later. And make sure that everybody sees it before we do. You won't vote on anything that you haven't seen, don't worry. Anything else with this? Any other questions, comments, concerns, issues, stories you'd like to tell, budget related? No?
I'd like to thank Gil for making that change.
All right.
I did not write this.
He adapted it for today.
I edited it.
All right, so are we happy with this? This is what we want to take to tomorrow and vote on? Mary says yes. Anybody else? This is what we want to do? Yeah, Tom? Go around the room. Everybody give me a head shake if we're ready for this. Yeah? Okay. Bob?
Robert Smith, cab. Just as a recommendation or suggestion, you might change, if that sentence is kind of a hanging point, you could change it just to say, as any funding short of this would be a great concern to CAB, we will closely watch the level of funding, et cetera.
I like that. Give that to us and we'll make that change after the meeting. I think that'll be good. That sounds good to you. Yeah? Joyce is like, yes, I don't want to talk about this anymore.
James, since we don't have Dave on the board anymore, as a point of process, shouldn't we go ahead and get that tweaked here so we all know what we're voting on tomorrow?
Sure. I mean,
Because we're not supposed to do any edits during voting.
I was only going to show you the edit tomorrow. We weren't going to edit, but do you have that written down?
I mean, we have the time.
Oh,
so
I know you have
If we
the
just
time.
iron out those two sentences, I think
I just didn't want
we
to
have
have
a
to
votable
make her
document.
awkwardly listen as we went along, but since he's got it written down.
Perfect. Thanks, Bob.
So, where it says any funding, at the very beginning, add an as. Nope, that's too far.
Back up.
You've gone way too far.
Computers sometimes are too fast. Lowercase, that'd be it. Maybe I should scroll down. Oh, yeah. But if they've written enough technical reports and documents, you learn to shorten things up to where it's as short as possible and concise.
So how do we feel about this? Yes, Joyce?
Can we lose the comma and make it and?
Would you then drop the as that starts the sentence and go back to any?
Any, yes.
Yeah.
You need a comma there.
Any funding short of this would be a great concern to the SRS CAB, and we will closely watch the level of funding for PBS 14C radioactive liquid tank waste stabilization and disposition.
I like it.
Just add the comma after cab there.
The comma after CAB. Okay. Bobby, let's get you a microphone.
Bobby Williams, cab. If we're going to put SRS cab down there, we're going to have to put it in parentheses in that first sentence after Savannah River Citizens Advisory Board.
Yeah. Semantics.
What else? What other kind of changes do we want to make to this? Doug?
Doug Howard Cap. On that, can you scroll down to the last paragraph?
Yeah.
And number 4 reads, PBS 20, support increased security in all areas, including adequate funding for cybersecurity, and, that and,
Oh, the and is going down to the next line.
is it?
Yeah. So you see how it's like,
Yeah,
the
that's-
first sentence has a, in addition, colon, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
Okay.
Either remove it there or add it in number 3 up top.
Yeah, we'll have to shift it. No, because number 3 is going to go. So 4 will become 3 and then 5 will become 4.
No, I mean in the top section, number 3.
Oh, I see. Up there.
And you can remove the semicolon in 2C. Oh, no, never mind. That was staying with the format of last year.
Yeah. So to match it at the end of 3 up there, semicolon. Okay. Yeah. And then and. So that it includes 4. Mr. Murray.
Is there any Greg Murray, is there any reason the second section with the numbers aren't 4 through whatever that is, 8 or 9? Because to me, it's kind of confusing reading this way. I'm assuming, though, they're lower priorities, but they're still things that are important to us.
Okay.
It's a fair criticism. I think we talked about it last year as well.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe to avoid confusion, have the bottom section A through D, or continue 5 through.
We can do that. We can continue the numbering. We can number them down.
I think the conversation last year was that bottom section was not necessarily prioritized.
Yeah.
They were just areas of concern.
Joyce?
We didn't officially agree on the 5, 6, 7, 8.
Right.
All right. Joyce?
It's a question. Joyce Underwood, cab. Is it because the top ones, no, that's not right. I was going to say it's because the top ones are PBSs and the bottom ones aren't, but some of the bottom ones are, so that doesn't make any sense. Never mind. Sorry.
So we'll just renumber them. I think after a couple people bring it up that it doesn't make any sense, we'll just change it so that it makes sense. Okay. Anything else? The last sentence, you got wording for it? Cool.
Well, fortunately, Mike's in the room, so he knows exactly what we mean, I hope. Yeah, I did have one other comment that I didn't bring out in discussion. I had to pull up my notes from when this was edited. There have been some significant comments by CAB members regarding 235F. And from my point of view, many have seen 235F as a fairly safe tomb unless consumed by a pillar of fire. And obviously, we know that things aren't typically consumed by a pillar of fire and atomized into the atmosphere in a split second. So I do not know if we even really need that one in the top section. I kind of see it as a fairly safe tomb myself. It's great that we're nibbling away at it, but I don't honestly feel, from my perspective, that it's the highest of high priorities.
Don, you have thoughts on that?
Yes, I have thoughts on that. Dawn Gillis, Cab. Having worked 235F in my previous life, and I totally understand what you're saying, Dan, but plutonium-238, which is in there, is a really bad actor. And yes, if it goes up in a pillar of fire, then everybody's in trouble. But it doesn't have to be a pillar of fire to still cause trouble.
Sure.
So, and the fact that it is number 4 on this list, and just about everything else is covered under some other agreement, it's not like we're saying go get extra money for it. We're just saying we're interested. I would like to see it stay.
What do you think? What's the consensus? Leave it in, take it out? Gil?
Back in the fall, or I had the opportunity to go to Hanford in a meeting, an all-chairs meeting, and they have a building similar, and again, this is just Gil, they have a building similar to 235F that's about 80% of the size of 235F, according to what I was told, and the actual deconstruction of that building, and they're cleaning it up, is the budget, the whole program budget for it's $2.1 billion to tear that thing down. I understand that you know, pillar of fire and the 238 and everything that's in there is bad. So I mean, with that, Don, you know, I respect your insight, you know, tremendously. But I kind of lean with Dan. I mean, so convince me.
Dawn Gillis, Cab. It's a question for DOE. What is the budget expectation for just doing what you're doing now? To mitigate the PU-238, essentially.
Maxine Maxted, DOE. So for 235F, you're correct, Gil. It's about $3 million this year that they're using for the risk reduction activities. For us to stay on track, we really need about $7 million a year to finish those activities. So we go forward, and if we can get the $7 million, then that helps us get further along. Sometimes we can't, and then we get as far along as we can in that year.
So what's the total estimated project cost?
Oh, I don't know that. I can get that answer for you.
You're talking $7 million a year for how many years? 3, 4, 5, 10, 20?
I believe it's between 5 and 8, but I have to get that information to be more specific.
So we're not getting anywhere near $1 billion. But this is just for PU bid.
That's maintained. She's talking about maintaining.
Oh, I'm not including maintaining. I'm just talking about risk reduction. The S&M activities are not in any of those numbers I just quoted.
This is to get rid of the PU-238 out of the building. This is not to take the building down either. This is just.
I'm talking about
I'm not even talking about taking the building down. I'm talking about getting the PU-238 out of there, which is going to be what, 20, 30 million tops. We're not talking anywhere close to $1 billion
Well, then,
for this.
with what you're saying, I think you may want to change number 4.
Well, why? It's risk reduction. That's all we're talking about is risk reduction. We're not talking about decommissioning. Decommissioning is an entirely different thing.
Yeah, Tom French, the cab. I think if you listen to both sides of the argument, if we just slide keep it on the list, but slide it down in the priority, because I personally believe that the pension funding is more important than 235F. So maybe we could, since we're going to number them sequentially, right, James? So it'll be 1 through 8 or whatever. So moving 4 just keeps it in the stack. We just move it to a different position.
I could go with that, yeah, because
it's important. But
it's important to continue it, but yeah, pension is important.
So below the second number 1?
Yeah.
Which is going to become,
yeah.
There we go.
I could live with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Joyce?
Joyce Underwood, Cab, he kind of said what I was going to say. I wanted to know if that's what we were going to do. But now I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, is that more important than infrastructure? Like, where do we want it on the list? Is that where we want it ultimately? Thoughts, questions, comments, concerns? I don't know.
How do we feel about that as relates to infrastructure? Should it go a step lower?
I think it's close enough.
Close enough. Dawn says close enough. Don't move it again. Who else? Who else wants to comment on infrastructure in the site? Larry does. Can I get you to talk into your mic? Yeah.
Larry Tom Cap. Just as a point of clarification, I thought the bottom group was not in any particular order according to priorities anyway.
It used to not be, but now we are renumbering it, adding it to, and making it part of.
It will be, Larry.
It will be.
Yeah.
By the time we are done, it is going to be in an order. So what do you think? Do we leave it where it is? Do we leave 235F where it is, or do we put it below infrastructure? Joyce?
Okay, let me ask another question so that I'm clear on what I'm looking at. Joyce Underwood Cab. The ones at the top are our highest priorities in order of priority, right?
Yes.
The ones underneath are stuff we'd like to see done, but no particular order. Yes?
Well, no, at this point, I think that we're
Well,
ordering
as
it.
it was written.
Originally, yes.
Okay, so then the question becomes, how high of a priority in the scheme of things is PBS 41? Is it a high priority and go above the split, or is it meh on the bottom?
Why don't we go ahead and renumber through 10 or whatever?
Yeah.
And then everybody can see the whole stack.
Okay.
Take a second and renumber those bottom ones to, what is it? 4, 5, 6. I don't know, you might have to delete it and start over. There you go. And now let's go ahead and strike. Let's just go ahead and delete number 7 line. We all know that we're cutting that, right? Let's cut it out so that everything is numbered. There we go. So now you got it in front of you. Don?
Dawn Gillis Cab, since the bottom half is now becoming in order, I would suggest we take out the to reiterate little paragraph and the in addition, take the whole middle part out, make the list one long list, and then at the bottom say, to reiterate, this is our most important. So now because we're changing what we used to think. Versus splitting up the list.
So we're going to delete and move to reiterate underneath number 8.
Oh. Take that sentence out.
There you go. So this is what you got now. Dan?
Dan Kaminsky Cab. Since we are reprioritizing that bottom list, Tom, specific question for the ad hoc committee at this point. We certainly don't want to undermine those recommendations coming out of it. Does number 4, because this is for 2020 budget, when the impact starts significantly hitting, do we really want that